Welcome back, everyone. It is time to answer our viewer questions, and we've been getting some great ones all week long from Twitter, from Facebook, and email. So let's get to those right away. Our first one comes from Amir, who writes in and says, if I'm applying for a green card, do I have to disclose that I've had a conviction expunged?
Yes. The easy answer is yes. And of course, you want to do it because you are applying to the federal government besides, and they are one of the exceptions, but they already have the answer. So it doesn't hurt you to be forthright on that.
Okay, all right.
And I would just add to that, we talked about certain employers that you have to reveal certain things to. The last thing you want to be doing is when you're speaking to the federal government, is have them think that you are not being forthcoming with the facts. I would say I had a conviction for whatever it is. I was eligible to have it expunged. I have had it expunged. Provide the documentation. Talk to an immigration attorney about how best to navigate those waters. That's not my area of specialty, but talk to an immigration attorney about how best to proceed.
Right.
Because we know that after you get your immigration status, if you get a conviction, certain convictions, that can jeopardize your citizenship.
Wow.
So please talk to an immigration attorney if you have a shot at getting a green card, citizenship, residency. It's certainly money well spent.
I think it's very important because some people might automatically think, well, if I disclose that information, it's really going to hurt me. But it sounds like what you're both saying is that by not disclosing it, it could hurt you perhaps even more.
Right, exactly. Let me emphasize something that John said too. For a person who has not yet received their citizenship, they should always make their lawyer aware and the judge aware of their status, because it could have consequences, as John was saying. And so they want to be much more careful about voluntarily entering a plea to certain offenses because of consequences with immigration status.
Okay.
So I think that was excellent that you pointed that out.
Yeah, and let me that's worth taking 30 more seconds. In other words, if you are in the country, in the United States, and you're pleading guilty to a crime, well, suppose you have a green card and you're pleading guilty to a crime. That can affect your citizenship. So extremely important, and I'm glad that Judge Bonin highlighted that. If you're pleading guilty to a crime and you're legally in this country and you got citizenship after coming here, or you came here with permission and got residency, and you're pleading guilty to a crime, you better do that with the advice and consent of an immigration attorney, not just your criminal court attorney who may know nothing about immigration law. That's a really good point.
Well, you know, while we're talking about you know, using an attorney, not using an attorney, I actually came across something on the internet, which was an expungement kit, self-expungement kit. Can people do this on their own, or should they have an attorney? How difficult is this?
I mean, I wouldn't do it on my own off of the internet.
Yeah.
I'd go down to the courthouse and ask someone at the court, if you were, let's say you were just arrested and nothing ever came of it, you ought to get that off your record. You really should. You should get that expunged from your public record. But go to the courthouse, and they have the forms there, and they can assist you, and it shouldn't even cost you anything.
Okay.
But over the internet, I would be very leery. And don't you agree, John? Like when they do these deals about you can write your own will.
I would be very wary. And but let me add this: we're going to put on the John Redmann Power of Attorney or John Redmann POA website some forms that are offered at the various courthouses, St. Tammany, Jefferson Parish, and Orleans Parish. Some forms that are available, and they're going to look like this. You'll be able to download the PDFs. However, also on my website, we have an extended interview. It lasts about 10 minutes with these two attorneys we talked about before, who talk about the pros and cons of trying to do it on your own. Certainly you can try it. You may have success. They indicated that there are some fees that some courthouses charge for just doing it all on your own, but you also need to do a motion to set aside conviction. Do you know how to do that? You need to be careful about it. And so watch the segment on there. You'll get some insights. Try and do it yourself. Maybe you'll be successful, and it's all good.
Okay.
But if not, you may need to follow up with an attorney.
Okay, all right, let's go to Lynn. She posted a question on our Facebook wall. She says, do you have to wait before getting an expungement, and is there a time limit for a criminal record to be automatically expunged?
Well, first off, there's no such thing as an automatic expungement.
Okay.
So anybody who thinks that, and there's no such thing that just because your lawyer told you it was expunged, that it's expunged.
That it's actually expunged? Okay.
Yes.
That's important to know.
A lot of times
That's
lawyers
very
say that
important to
and they
know.
don't do the paperwork.
You mean they
Wow.
can't trust all lawyers?
They really can't. A person should ask for the proof, certified copies of their expungement records,
Okay.
And they go to the courthouse and request copies of their own records themselves.
Yes.
They might charge a few bucks for a certified copy, but
Okay.
But
So let's get that language out. No automatic expungement.
no automatic expungement. Secondly, if you are trying to get an arrest expunged, you typically have to wait unless the DA is willing to sign a paper saying, I will not prosecute you ever for this offense. You have to wait until all the years are over with from the time that you could be prosecuted. There's certain statutes of limitation depending on whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony or what kind of a felony. So, but the DA can short circuit that if the district attorney
usually
wants
it's a couple of years for most crimes unless it's murder, in which case it's pretty much forever.
If you have pled guilty, but then you did it under this procedure, as John was saying, where the plea of guilty is going to be set aside, the judge is going to, there's two procedures. Sometimes you plead guilty, but the judge doesn't accept the guilty plea, puts you on probation. When that period of time is finished, then you come back in and you get it expunged. The other procedure is you plead guilty, the judge accepts your guilty plea, you put on probation, and then at the end of that period, you come back in and ask and go. So it's usually, you have to finish the probationary period.
You have to before you can actually,
Get the expungement.
Get the
right.
expungement. Okay. Marcella has a question. She says, how can one get drug charges expunged? Very old drug charges for a man who has changed his life and wants to be able to work and support his family and get a good paying job. That apparently is the example that she's giving. And I would imagine that there are lots of cases like that.
Yeah, there really is. What the person should do, it depends on what kind of a charge it was, because if it was a distribution charge, it's not going to be expunged. But if it was a possession charge, they might be able to go in and file some sort of a motion with the judge, even many years later, saying, would you consider changing the arrangement? In other words, going back and asking, let me act as if I had done it the correct way to get this benefit. And depending on the person's situation. But a lot of times too, it depends on how old it is too.
Okay, all right. We're going to go to Mike from New Orleans. He writes into us. He says, why do you have to file for an expungement if you are acquitted? Shouldn't the judge be able to automatically, there's that word again, strike your record?
It's a good question.
It's a great question, and that's not to be addressed to the judge, but to the legislator, the person who writes the laws.
Right.
And that probably ought to be what happens, but it's not the law currently.
Currently, yeah.
And but I would suggest to Mike that he find out who his legislator is, point out that problem to him, and see if maybe they could get it changed.
Okay.
And I would suggest to Mike too that while he's at it, if you're arrested and no charges are brought, your arrest should automatically be expunged too.
Okay, all right then. And our last question, can an employer in Louisiana find out about my arrest in Florida should I try to get it expunged?
The answer, can he find out about it in Florida? Yes. Should I try to get it expunged? In other words,
go to Florida.
Yes.
Yes.
Go to Florida and try to get it, yes.
Yes,
The
yes.
two answers, simple answers then. Yes,
Yes,
he can,
and yes.
and yes. And that's really the answer to any viewer. If you can get your record expunged, publicly concealed, do that. Because there are a lot of people cannot get jobs because of their records.
Okay, all right. Judge Bonin, thank you so very much.
Thank
We've
y'all
learned
very
a lot
much.
today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Judge Bonin, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. A lot of useful information. We look forward to having you back another
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you again. God bless.
Thank you, Shauna.
That's all the time we have, folks. Shauna, thank you again for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, join us next week for another episode of John Redmann, Power of Attorney.